Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for dialing into today's webinar, Maximise Your Business Value. My name is Jamie Farmer. I'm the Managing Director of Grow New Zealand Business, and I've had the privilege of being in business through various corporate and local opportunities for more than 30 years. This presentation draws together that experience, but also much research done by many organisations involved in selling businesses, and they have shared their tips with us today. So what we're going to walk through is just an introduction around maximising your business value. And then I'm going to touch on the big question, which is actually very obvious, but often we lose sight of this as we get involved in our businesses from a day-to-day purpose. And a very important aspect is we must view this topic from the eyes of the buyer. And seems obvious, you must have a plan. But a lot of us as business owners don't have a plan. And then we're going to work through some of the detail around drivers of sale price. It's all about increasing your business value from a certain level today to what your goal is in the future around tomorrow. If asked, many of us business owners would say that it's our goal to sell or transfer our business in order to fund our retirement. We start a business because we have a passion or a love for something, but it's also about financial security for us and our families. It's very normal that we start this business with passion and goals, and then a year or two later, we're caught up in the day-to-day grind, and we can actually get a little bit blinkered around the opportunities within our business and what drives value. So it's important to stop and pause and think about how much is my business really worth? How much is it worth today? And is that aligned with my goal in the future around funding my retirement and my family's security? And we may have a vague idea of what it should be worth, but we don't have tangible numbers or market knowledge to base it on. And that is the purpose of today's webinar, to share some of that with you. But often it's our baby and something we love, and often we overprice our own business. So we're not actually looking through the buyer's eyes. It's really important to look through the buyer's eyes as you step through this journey. So that's tip number one today. Need to look through the buyer's eyes. Markets are driven around what people will pay, not necessarily what we want. So really, really important tip. And we'll talk some more about that as we move through. The webinar is based on research, on actual business sales results from a number of businesses such as Link, as an example, who's probably the premier seller of businesses in New Zealand, and using their insights and data around what drives business value. And the presentation is high level in nature, and it's for general guidance only. Every business is different. Every market is different. An example would be for a photography business. The valuation and the opportunity around that is very different to what we call SaaS businesses, which are software as a service businesses. They can often achieve multiples of 120, 150. So this is general guidance mainly. But to help you as a business owner build a deeper understanding of what drives business value through the eyes of buyers, really important point. And then a deeper understanding of the drivers, what the drivers are to maximising the future sale price of your business. And there might be a couple of surprises again. The tip number two is you need to plan and act today for the future. It is a common mistake where business owners go to sell and they aren't well prepared. We get this feedback from the business brokers all the time. The lack of preparation prior really draws back on the sale price. The other unfortunate circumstance can be due to a change in circumstances, particularly with health, which then means there's a more urgent need to sell for those reasons. And again, because the preparation hasn't been done properly beforehand, the sale price is negatively impacted. I do love that little photo there from Dwight from The Office. If you've got any Office fans out there, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Seems pretty obvious, but Dwight, a little bit tongue in cheek, you failed to plan, therefore you did not plan to fail. Well, at the end of the day, you still failed, right? So it's important to have a plan. So the big question to answer, this is good old 101 around goal setting. When and how much do you want to sell your business for? Now that goal, of course, can be movable. You might have a goal to, your exit strategy might be in 5 years' time to sell your business for X amount. You get to 5 years' time, you're still loving life, you're seeing plenty of opportunity in the business, you can change your mind. You can certainly change your mind, but just having that goal and that context around that goal now really helps you focus on the how. And the goals will also change according to market. What does happen with business valuations is markets go up and down. We would have seen in the GFC businesses selling for much lower multiples. But then during boom times, sometimes you get some crazy prices getting paid. I think Yellow is a good example where they paid over the odds for a number of acquisitions over the years. Yeah, maybe not looking enough around the detail of the business or understanding the strategic fit of that acquisition. But having a clear goal helps you focus on the how. I'm going to dig into that more now. So this is the most important tip of this presentation. So if you look at the way business valuations work at the highest of levels, if you're an employee, you don't accrue any value for what you contribute to the business outside of a salary. So when you leave that business, you have no equity, you get no value. If you're self-employed, and what the definition of self-employed there might be like an electrician, a one-man band who has a van, goes around Christchurch servicing. It might be a hairdresser as an example, but you're a self-employed operation. The business is all about you. You are the business. Plumbers, one-man band examples there is another one. So generally they'll get 1 to 2 times earnings. So if your EBITDA or your earnings before interest and tax and depreciation is $300,000, you can expect to sell that business somewhere between $300,000 and $600,000. The next one on the top right is a business owner. So that's an example where you've got some other infrastructure around you. The person leading the business is really still the business, is mainly the knowledge and the IP around the business. But they've got a team, might be a couple of managers, maybe a couple of apprentices, if we use the plumber or electrician example, and they might have 3 or 4 vans. So there's a little bit less reliance totally on the individual, but there's still a heavy reliance on the individual. And those businesses can expect to sell on average between 2 and 4 times earnings. Here's the big takeaway. The less your business is reliant on you as an owner, the higher the multiple. So what investors look for is risk. And we're going to dig into this a bit more in the upcoming slides. But if someone's buying a business and investment, they want to be confident that it doesn't require substantial amounts of their time. Being on the board, being a director, that's fine. So normally those businesses will return 10 to 12 times earnings. In some extreme cases, it can be 150, 200 times earnings, depending on a number of other factors. If you want some examples around that at a high level, Xero is probably an example, where the earnings, Amazon is a really high profile example. So there's ones that got big scale, big potential. But the most important tip to increase value is the less reliant the business is reliant on you as the business owner, the more it's worth, and exponentially. It makes a massive difference. Does that mean today that you as the business owner need to extract yourself from the business? No. But it does mean you need to have a plan that you're thinking about over time, how that can occur. So that's a really important point, having the plan over time. And we'll talk some more about that. So here's the 3 common financial mistakes that can decrease value of a business. And number 1 is dependent on the business owner, dependence. Revenue is a secondary factor, as we saw from the math earlier on. And the biggest concern a buyer usually has about the business is the dependence on the current owner. Not only does this cause the business to be unattractive to a buyer, but also creates a greater risk for the current owner. How would that business continue to function and prosper without the owner? A perfect example, again, is the one-man band electrician. If the electrician breaks their leg, hurts their back, for whatever reason can't work, that business as itself ceases to actually operate unless they start to subcontract work out, and of course margins shrink and there's no point of difference. So too many times an owner has the business relationships, the processes, the procedures, and all the technical know-how under his or her control, and often in their head. They're often not documented. It's that unconscious IP that is with that person. And in some extreme cases, and the plumber electrician is another good example, you can actually say the owner is the business. So it really highlights the point. So this is the direct opposite of what appeals to a buyer, as it significantly increases the risk for the buyer. It's all around the individual. The second thing to watch, and this is probably the greatest sport for a lot of business owners, but focusing on tax minimisation. An important part of valuations is profit, not only the profits today, but the profits in the future. And many business owners operate their companies to minimise income taxes. An old practice has been the siphoning of cash out of the business and not putting it through the books. Getting much harder to do. It also means, in my view, social irresponsibility, because we all have an obligation to help fund this great country. Whether we agree that the taxes are being spent the right way is another matter, but it is part of being a New Zealand citizen or resident that you agree to be part of the laws of the land. So this is actually not best practice when it comes to maximising business value. You don't want to minimise your taxes by artificially lowering profits. It'll cost you a staggering amount during the sales process. So if you are doing this and reducing your profits, let's say by $100,000 per year, and you go back to the earlier slide around the investment scenario, you could be costing yourself between $1 and $1.2 million in sale price. If it's only $10,000, I'm going to use the word only loosely, you could be costing yourself $100,000 to $120,000 in sale price. And let's remember, one of the great things about New Zealand, depending on the advice from your accountant, often these profits from capital growth, capital gains with the sale price of your business is tax-free. So just keep that in mind. So the money is normally spent on lifestyle as well, rather than funding the business. So it's just the balancing around how do you invest in your business to grow and increase value. Otherwise, you end up with a form of consumption, expensive holidays to Banff, nice big houses, big cars, when you're actually better off creating wealth in your business and treating it like an investment. Another mistake is focusing all about revenue. It's actually not about revenue, it's about profit growth, and profit growth comes from margins. It is important to have increasing revenue, but if margins are ignored in the process, buyers will look at that trend and see a downward trend and discount the value of the business because of that. So don't sacrifice your margins in order to keep gross revenues high. They weaken your position in the marketplace. And a key strategy for many businesses to increase their margins is to look at recurring revenue in your business, such as service or maintenance contracts, ongoing consumable products or replacement part contracts, and memberships and subscriptions for products and services or information. Now, I've had a number of business owners saying, I can't do that in my business. Now, I'll give you an example of where that thinking was playing out, but we changed that quite quickly, is with the repairs and maintenance of gas heaters. Now, they should be done annually. So you can actually look at ways to sign up your clients to an annual subscription and lock them into an ongoing contract, pre-booking in, and that shows a buyer that you have forward bookings and forward revenue. Recurring revenue, this is why SaaS models are valued so high. Recurring revenue is guaranteed revenue, at least for a period of time. Now, depending on the contracts, could be 12 months, could be 3 years, could be 5 years. And it doesn't require the same level of sales and owner effort as one-time revenue. Also, it doesn't require the same amount of marketing investment because you have those clients repeating. So you're not continually chasing your tail trying to acquire new customers. And the revenue often has higher margins because it's less about price. It's more around satisfaction of service or product or the service provided. And this is the most highly coveted aspect by buyers. And at the last line there, studies show that businesses with recurring revenue sell at much higher multiples. If you've got recurring revenue and margin stable or growing and revenue growing, you can get multiples in the 20s and 30s. And there's a bunch of examples around that. But generally the SaaS models, software as a service model. So some other tips to increase business value, and this is really 101 stuff, and if you need to engage your accountant or engage with an expert to help take an external view and come in and look at this, but find ways to improve the profitability. And I think many of us went through this exercise during COVID because we were forced to. It wasn't necessarily about improving profitability, but it was about minimizing cost. And we're always saying to all of our members, if you spend $1 and make more than $1, that's great. If you spend a dollar and make less than a dollar, stop it. So looking at ways that you can actually squeeze more out of your cost base or get a cost reduction. And there's various ways to do that, and it really helps you the margin. Creating a proof of future revenue, we've already touched on that before. Buyers value that very highly. And then diversifying your revenue streams. This comes back to customer journeys. I have not yet seen a business, no matter how specialized or how generalized, that cannot do other things for its clients. And often looking at your customers and their journeys and what they're doing, you can start to see other opportunities that actually fit within your business model. There's many simple examples around that. You know, if you look at mobile phones as an example, so the mobile phone providers are now starting to offer broadband, wireless broadband. They're all add-ons they can do to their current client base. For an electrician, you can offer a free, not a free, but an annual safety review or an annual testing review as an example. The same for plumbers. There's many different things you can do to diversify your revenue streams. Hairdressers are a great example. Hairdressers, you start to sell shampoo and conditioner. That's a simple one. You start to think about hairdressing around, it's an industry of making people feel good and look good. There's a whole bunch of additional stuff that comes after that. Brushes, combs, hair dryers, all this sort of stuff. So it's a really good opportunity to look at your customers, their journey, and what their other needs are. And point 4, this is particularly critical in the 12 months leading up to your goal sale date. Really consider around the capital investments that you've got coming up. If you're looking to buy a new machine, you really want to be talking to your accountant and a business broker to understand if the investment in that machine is going to pay off when it comes to your sale price. In many cases, you're actually better off not doing it and letting the buyer do it. For 2 reasons. 1, it reduces the amount of capital you put into the business. 2, it leaves the upside of that opportunity on the table for the buyer. And to highlight that, if you go across the right, here's some examples of how the numbers play out. So I've just used $1 million and $1.25 million because it's easy for the math, but you can change those numbers. But you know, if you're looking at a business owner scenario where your multiples 4 or 5 times, $1 million in EBITDA, you're looking at $5 million, but being able to drive some more value out of these top 4 points and lifting EBITDA over a 12-month period to 1.25 actually results in $1.25 million in increased value. So it's these little levers, just pulling those little levers and working through them with a good plan that can drive exponential value. And if it's an investor type of sale, where there's not much reliance at all on the business owner, the multiples are massive. You start to see that difference meaning about $3 million. So these little things actually drive exponential growth in your value. So sort of to wrap it up, and again, I'm going to just reiterate, this presentation is general in nature, so every business is different. But as a general theme, these are the things that add value outside of the business owner reliance. Good cash flow makes sense. You know, a buyer doesn't necessarily want to be coming in and tipping in lots of capital to turn around a negative returning business. Good history and reputation is so important. Most businesses fail in the first year. Actually, 90% of businesses fail in the first year. So if you've been going 4 or 5 years, that's a big tick. If you've been going 10 years, that's a huge tick. And you've got loyal customers, great reviews, Google reviews is an example. Your suppliers, strong relationships, that's a big tick. And if you're in a growth industry, that's certainly very attractive for buyers. An example of that is if you own a video store today, your sale price is not likely to be very high. Why? Because video is gone. It's been replaced by online through Netflix and Disney and all that sort of stuff. So that's an example of declining industry. But there's many examples of strong growth in industries. The other part, and this is really forgotten about, is a proven and repeatable marketing plan. A buyer would like to know, if I invest X in marketing, I will generate Y. And if you've got a proven, documented, repeatable marketing plan, that adds value to your business. When we're talking about physical sites, location, when we're talking about digital sites, we're talking about website quality, data quality, compliance with the law. I mentioned compliance with the law because many websites out there today in New Zealand do not comply with the Privacy Act. They don't have privacy statements, so it's a worry. Good plant and systems, that means there's not a massive amount of capital required to rebuild plant. And a competitive advantage, which can often tie back to reputation. Good staff, again, that lack of reliance on the business owner. And this is the point we're talking about earlier on. You don't need to action this today, but you do need to think about over time, if you are the business, how you become less about the day-to-day business and you have people, processes, or technology running that business. And the products and services, the breadth of products and services definitely adds value. No surprise, lower valuations, weak financials, or the worst ones. I've seen some examples where business owners are doing their own financials, so that creates some doubt. A buyer doesn't know the business owner from a bar of soap, so having an accountant certify business financials is very important. A small customer base, so all of this is now about risk. A small customer base means there's high sensitivity to a customer leaving. If you've only got 10 clients and one leaves, there's 10% of your client base gone. If you've got 100 clients and one or two leave, it's not the same amount of pain. So this is about risk management. High customer churn, that would indicate that the products or services aren't valued and we're not meeting market needs. The video store example around poor industry outlook's a good one. And price cutting. If price is your lever, you're going to race to the bottom and margin is going to squeeze and squeeze and squeeze. That's not positive. Your ability to generate margin through value is really important. All the relationships held with the owners are back to the business owner reliance. Poor records, systems and plants. It's actually surprising the amount of businesses who don't have their processes and procedures documented. So investing in operating manuals and operating procedures that are documented at least 2 years prior to the sale is a very important point. A buyer will be impressed to come in and see everything documented. They will then want to see it actually happening in real life. So they'll be part of their due diligence process. And obviously poor public reviews aren't going to help. And back to the video example, selling dated products or services. You know, if you're selling a Nokia 6610 today, you're probably not an attractive business proposition for someone to buy, to use an extreme example. So what's really important to bring all this together is to actually spend some time and strategize, plan, and prioritize effort to maximize value. Like I said earlier, this presentation is general in nature, so not every single thing will apply to you. There may be some things you're already doing really well, so you actually don't need to address those, but there's maybe a couple of things that you've picked up today that you can see if you start to address those, it will help you achieve your goal and add value to your business. We always recommend using this quadrant to the left. And so ranking all the things and looking at what's the high impact, high effort, high impact, low effort, and of course, high impact, low effort is the first thing you should do. High impact, low effort, it makes so much sense. An example would be documenting your policies and procedures. Now that's actually low effort if you actually start to get people to do it as they're doing the job. It doesn't need to be shut the business for a day, but you work through that. If you're using a marketing plan, document it, have the results documented. If we invest $1,000, we get 5 new clients for $3,300 in revenue, which generates X amount of margin. The last ones on your list will be your low impact, high effort ones. And you may actually never do those because it's not going to add value. But always link this back to the question, when and how much do I want to sell my business for? And really encourage you strongly with all your decisions, think about how does this impact my business value? If it's a positive impact, do it using the matrix to the left. If it's not a positive impact, don't do it. We often get caught up in these emotional decisions in business where it feels nice, but financially actually doesn't make sense. So asking that question is a really good grounding point. Does this help the goal to be achieved? So in summary, the big 4 points is the less reliant the business is on the owner, the more it's worth. This is often a big surprise to business owners. The higher the growth potential, the more it's worth. The lower the risk profile, the more it's worth. When we talk about risk, that is risk on the business owner, risk around suppliers, risk around market trends, is it a growth industry or a declining industry? And the more documented and repeatable, the more your business is worth. So understanding reliance on business owners, understanding the concept around risk and how you reduce risk in the business is very important for day-to-day operations, but obviously very, very important for business valuations. And then understanding potential. So a common error that some business owners make is they hang on too long. You will get exponential valuations based on the potential in the market. If you're at a very large saturation point in that market, you're actually diminishing your sale price. It's sort of contrary to what you would think, but that's actually how it works. So overall, decrease risk and increase potential to maximize. And this is all through the eyes of the buyer, the ones out there who'll hand the money over. So if you do want professional help and access to subsidised support to maximise your business value, we're here to help. Accountants are a great source as well, as are various business brokers, and there's a couple who are partners with GrowNZ Business. I'd also encourage you to think about the timing of your goal. If it's in 5 years' time, you do want to start making some steps now. If in 2 years' time, you need to start acting with urgency, because we know what happens. Time flies, and it'll be here before you know it. So after the presentation, we'll send this webinar out, and you'll also get a free copy of the ebook, Maximise Your Business Value. Again, it's at a high level and it's general in nature, but it's got some useful tips in there. So what I'd like to do now is open up to any questions that we have from the group, and would be more than happy to take those.